So I want to introduce you, folks, to this case here from the Michigan Daily. This is from November of last year. Why is it so essential that I die in here? What I learned visiting ninja killer Temujin Kensu in prison. He's innocent. And this was an article in the Michigan Daily by Liam Rapley. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs to set this up. Have you ever been to prison? Temujin Kensu has. In fact, he's been in prison for nearly twice my lifetime, 37 years. This is a young man who wrote this. Kensu is currently serving a life sentence he received after being convicted of the murder of 21-year-old Scott Macklem in 1987. This is usually how things go in the American justice system. If you murder somebody and it's proven in court that you really did it, you go to prison for a while, sometimes for your whole life. This is what has happened to Temujin Kensu. There's just one small problem. Kensu was more than 400 miles away from the scene of the crime when Scott Macklem was murdered in 1986. For 37 years, he has maintained his innocence. An amalgamation of politicians, police officers, judges, record producers, journalists, and private investigators, all of various political affiliations, have publicly called for his freedom. That freedom is yet to come. And a citizen journalist and peer of ours and friend of ours who's been covering this case for a very long time and who just recently actually made a trip to Michigan and was granted a jailhouse interview with Temujin himself is our friend. You all know who she is. Savage Joy Marie Mann. Joy, thanks for joining
Hey,
us.
Joy.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. This is incredibly important, and outside of the true crime space, it's just not really talked about.
Well, this is kind of, a beat of ours, the sort of anti-carceral beat. We've done certain stories like this. There's a big anti-incarceration rally in Albany, New York, coming up on a Tuesday, February 4th, which is a week from today, which I'll be at. I will be covering that on the ground. So any dissidents in the New York area want to come say hello, that's where I'll be at the state capitol on February 4th. Because the abuses of the justice system is something that, Russ and I both feel very, very strongly about. And this case fits in perfectly to that theme, obviously. It fits in all too well. So why don't you explain the case of Temujin Kensu, who he is and what this case is, and just how outrageous the guilty verdict was?
So it's very it's insane. I tell him quite often if it was a movie, it would be like a slapstick comedy because nobody would believe any of this. It's way too bananas. So essentially, November 5th, 1986, Temujin Kensu, prior Fred Freeman, yes, free man, irony,
Right.
irony. So over he was 438 miles away when a young college student, Scott Macklem, was killed at his community college. He was shot one time in the side. Temujin has never met Scott. Scott was the son of a mayor. So with that, there was pressure to absolutely get this case closed. Um,
Mhm.
Temujin had a falling out with a girl he dated a few times. She told the police it was probably him. They never heard anything about this guy, Temujin. Who the hell is that? She recommended it may be her and him, excuse me, and that's how all this unfolded. So yeah, the first thing, he's 438 miles away. Case closed, right? He has over a dozen witnesses, nine of them unimpeachable, who testified at court. Um, and so
They
you're like,
testified at court, just to be clear, they testified at court that he was more than 400 miles away from the scene
correct,
of the crime,
correct.
within hours of the crime.
Correct. And he has receipts because his car was broken down. So he has a receipt. He was going to get his car fixed at Kmart. He has a receipt from a diner. He has receipts showing he was there for is well, for months, but even the whole like 24 hours, like before, during, and after the killing. So at this point, even though he was far away, they did not have any other suspects because they didn't really try. The killing, there was never a gun found. The only proof that was found was there were fingerprints on a shotgun shell case. They did not match Temujin. And they didn't search for who they matched. So that just helped their case, blaming Temujin for this killing. There has never been any proof he has ever known Scott. He didn't even live in the town this happened in. And then, as far as their case, since he was so far away, they had to come up with theories. Well, how did he get there? Because look, double digit witnesses know he was 438 miles away in a blizzard. So the first theory was that he teleported. That
What?
was the first theory. Yes, literally.
Like Star Trek?
Literally. Yeah.
I
Then when
never
that
heard
didn't
that one.
fly,
Yeah.
they're like, okay, he must have hired a private plane in a closed airport that was small, that, it was one of those little dinky airports that's like more like a mom and pop.
Yeah.
And it was closed because of the blizzard. Apparently, he walked up there, even though he was on welfare. He paid some random pilot to fly him the 438 miles. This is 1986. There are no cell phones, there is no internet, but apparently somehow he magically got a car in the field that the plane landed in. And that's how he drove a car to the community college to shoot Scott. Then he had the car and he brought that back to the field where he got back in the plane. And yeah, that's no pilot, no plane, no flight log,
Now I
nothing.
have to pause you for a second because this sounds. I would not blame the audience for thinking this is absolutely too crazy to be true, but it is. We're going to get more detail on this later, but this is a recent article from last year. Aviation experts dispute plane theory used to convict Michigan's ninja killer. Not to jump the gun on that, but I feel like I have to show you an NBC News headline so that you don't think in the audience that you're getting punked in this interview, because that's literally what they floated, that he must have chartered a plane to go and kill this guy and get back to his alibi, which was over 400 miles away, in time for witnesses to then say he wasn't where he could have been, where he had to have been, were he guilty. That's actually what they went with.
Accurate. And then when they picked up Temujin, his girlfriend was 7 months pregnant. They went to, when Temujin was out, he, just to go back a little, he called the police because he heard that his best friend was killed and that he was wanted for that murder. This was before the internet. So he's calling around, what the heck happened to my friend? Why am I wanted? He ends up starting to drive the 438 miles back to say, what's going on with my friend? He stops, he calls the police. They say, we don't know who you are. You're not wanted with us. We have no idea what you're talking about. So he goes to drive back home and he finds out that these 7 cops are in his house with his 7-month pregnant girlfriend, trashing the place, warrantless, trying to find something that they could possibly use to connect Temujin. Now, in a blizzard, literally below freezing, his 7-month pregnant girlfriend is told, no, you can't put on a jacket, you can't put on shoes, you need to get outside right now. They stick her in the back of a police car in a blizzard, no heat, have her out there for hours. The search was 7 hours. They found absolutely nothing. So then they do not question Temujin. They do not interrogate Temujin. They simply take him and lock him up. They also do not question or interrogate his pregnant girlfriend, Shelley. They don't do any of that. They just presumption, you're guilty. You're getting locked up. You don't have a right to, defend yourself or say where you were or anything. You are going to jail. And they put him in solitary. And all the while, he's racking his brain. What's going on? They say you're you're under arrest for murdering Scott. And he's like, who the hell is Scott? He literally has no idea who the hell they're talking about. And then it leads to the most insanely corrupt trial. I don't know if
All
you
right.
want me to get
Yeah,
into
let's get to
that.
that in a moment because I want to first. I mean, you have a couple of big announcements to make, and the first is that, vis-a-vis the audio recording. Do you want to set that up because we have about 3 minutes of your recent interview with him, where he talks in detail about how he was under the impression that a former friend of his had been killed, which is what brought him back home, so to speak. So, do you want to set this up?
Yeah, so one of the big announcements I have is that because for those who don't know, I'm 85% blind. And because of that, I had to, doing this with the prison was even setting up phone calls with him. I've been interviewing him from prison for almost 5 years, but setting this up so that I could fly out to Michigan from Pennsylvania and interview him in person in prison was just like, it's like a months long thing and everything. And also because I have equipment. I can't really read or write because I just can't see what I write. So I do things as transcripts. I record and download transcripts and then enlarge and use my devices and such. So I had to go through all this stuff to get them to allow me to bring a recorder. And then when I got there, it took over a half an hour to in, even though I had the warden's approval and everything at that point. Well, anyway, so I get in. Now, when I first find out that I'm allowed to bring this in, I genuinely was thinking about a transcript. That's what I was thinking. And then I was like, okay, well, he's been in here almost 4 decades. Nobody has ever been able to interview this man on audio or video. It's against policy. So I am
Really?
literally the only person who has ever been able to interview this man in prison. And I'm like, I got to do more than just do the transcript because this is huge. Like, and I was terrified that when I left, they were going to be like, you know what? No, you can't share this. You need to sign this. They said nothing. So it's mine. I can do what I want with it. So I have over 4 hours of
Wow.
recording with him from prison. And it's remarkable. I still can't believe it. So yeah.
All right, so we're going to take a listen. This is 3 minutes. So this is Temujin in his own words describing the mix-up that brought him within reach of the law, shall we say, and then we'll get to the trial, which is even more insane in a lot of ways after this. So this is about 3 minutes.
Start the initial investigation. Scott Macklem was shot once in the side.
Correct.
On November 5th, 1986. In a community college parking lot. Have you ever met Scott Macklem?
No. And I passed on polygraphs too. And I've never been at the college either. To this day, still don't know where the college is. Remember, I live way out in Jeddah, so I don't know this town. I never hung out in this area. The only place I ever went to was the Grove Mall, which is right there by the expressway exit.
Where were you specifically on November 5th, 1986?
At the exact time of the murder, 8:55 a.m., I was in bed with Michelle Woodworth in our home in Rock, Michigan, which is a little farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere.
And how far is that from the community college?
Almost 500 miles. I think it's like 424 to Port Huron. Remember, the roads were different. The Zilwaukee Bridge was different back then, and the speed limit was 55. And then Rock is another 30, 40 miles from town.
And Biggest mix-up in the history of mix-ups. You were told that your buddy, Tom Ford, was dead.
Yeah, so what happened was I went to Paul DeMar's house in the morning on Sunday. He was making us breakfast. So the phone rings, and it's Dash. He's like, hey, Paul, have you seen Mick? Have you seen Mick? You know, I got to talk to him. He goes, well, he's right here. And he goes, oh, my God, what, he's in town? He goes, yeah, he's right here right now. We're having pancakes. And he goes, let me talk to him. So he goes, like, Mick, man, listen, I got to talk to you. He said, I just talked to Mike Olson, man. Mike Olson's dad said that Tom Ford's dead, and they think you killed him. And Tom and I had a falling out. He had stolen from me, and all I could think was, wow, people know that Tom stole from me. Something bad happened to Tom. They must think that I got even with him or something. That's all I could picture, you know?
So this is a different guy who they told him was dead. This is not the victim of the murder that he's doing time for. Right.
But I instantly believed Tom really was dead. I knew that Mike Olson's dad, Gary, was like a local probation officer or something. He was connected.
So he didn't say how he was dead?
Nope, just said Tom was dead, and they thought that I killed him. And I said, I got to find out what happened. I got to find out what's going on. Why do they think that I did this, you know? And I was up here. I don't know what day he's supposed to have been killed on, so it's not like I'm putting together an alibi. I called Tom's family. They will not tell me anything, and I've known them since I was a baby. You know what they said to me on the phone? Fred, we're not allowed to tell you anything. We're not allowed to talk to you, and they hung up on me. But anyways, I pack a bag, and I tell Shelly, I'm going to go down, I'm going to find out what's going on. Deanna, the girl that I was arrested with, also knew Tom. She'd had a intimate relationship with Tom at one point. And I went down and I got her, and I said, Tom's dead, and they think that I killed him, and nobody will tell me anything. You'll see a log of calls, me calling the Flint Police Department, because that's where Tom and I are from. And they're telling me they don't have any John Does. And I at one point, I tell this Detective Sergeant Ahert, you know, you're trying to trick me. And he's like, listen, if I was trying to trick you, I'd try to trick you into coming in. I wouldn't say I don't want you, I'm not looking for you. And I was like, okay, that actually makes sense. And I was like, what the hell's going on? I go back and I tell Deanna all of this. I take her out to dinner. I call to check on Shelly. A man answers the phone. It's John Bounds. He's in my house without a warrant, and there's like 7 officers destroying my place and tearing through everything. 7-hour warrantless search. They found absolutely nothing.
Okay. So that's 3 minutes of 4 hours of audio that you have. Then at trial, let's talk about who his lawyer was.
So his lawyer was given to him by some people who were some of the corrupt people who the reasons that he's in prison. And his name is David Dean. He was on probation at the time he was representing Temujin, public defender. He was using crack cocaine heavily during the entire trial. And this was known by people. It also ended up that the prosecutor had actually lost his job because he had ties to the mob. Like, I'm not even kidding you. And then David Dean, who was Temujin's lawyer, was the one that got the prosecutor off the hook and got him this job as a prosecutor. He had never prosecuted any murder trials ever, but got this job. So that's a conflict of interest right there. You're going against a prosecutor who you have previously represented and gotten that job. So that was the first thing that's just like, okay, this is great. But it's, you know, as you guys know, when you're poor and you have no resources, you are given a public defender, and it doesn't matter if they are a known crackhead. It doesn't matter. That's what you're given. So
the whole thing seems like a setup, because we see this pattern a lot too. Whereas when there is a case that the state is under pressure to solve, in this case, the victim was a politically connected person, letting the case go unsolved is not an option. Right. And so they just have to find someone who they can pin it on. And then from there, let's set him up with the most dysfunctional lawyer possible, because 9 witnesses place the defendant more than 400 miles away from the crime within hours of the crime.
Right. Absolutely. And, you know, then the craziness starts. You have Temujin, this was I don't I don't know if you guys or your listeners know this. Back in the 80s, there was this satanic panic. Like
Yes.
Yep, we've talked
Yep.
about it.
West Memphis West West Memphis 3, the satanic panic,
Yeah.
long
Right. Right.
hair,
Yeah.
rock and roll, leather jacket, all these things, and this was very shocking to people on the jury. And you know so they're describing this man. He's a ninja killer. Oh my god, he has throwing stars coming out of his shoes, and all of these things are happening. He can, like I said, he can teleport, he can jump from trees, you name it. And so all of this stuff is being said now. Reminder, Scott was shot once in the side with a gun. So the prosecution brings in a huge cafeteria table, sticks it right in front of the jury, and says, okay, lays out swords and porn and nunchucks and all this stuff, and just says, oh, this is so disgusting and stuff like that during the trial. And it has nothing to do with Temujin. It's not his stuff. It's not even his stuff. And it's not relevant because it's not how Scott was killed. So that was the first thing.
Like this almost sounds like I mean, it's horrible what actually happened. It's like a Farrelly Brothers comedy about incompetent lawyers and think, isn't this terrible? Nunchucks.
It's funny.
Right.
Yeah, I thought of the Farrelly Brothers as well. Yeah, it's that just absurd.
Absolutely. So there's that. And that's already like, the jurors are like, oh my God, he listens to freaking hair bands and rides a motorcycle. Oh my God, he's a Satanist. He's a ninja killer. And they play on that and it works. Then you have a jailhouse snitch who stated on the stand he was not given any kind of rewards for saying what he said on the stand. The judge interjected when they were asked if he had any kind of rewards for testifying. The judge said no, he doesn't. And it turns out he did, and the judge's signature was all over the form giving him special treatment because of confessing. His name was Philip Joplin. Well, Philip Joplin later starts dying of cancer and comes clean and said, I lied. I never had that conversation with Temujin. When I talked to him, he told me he was innocent. So,
so he lied and said that Temujin had confessed to him that he did it. And then he later said that he lied about that. Yeah.
Exactly. That alone should be a new trial. The fact that your lawyer gets disbarred because they're a cokehead should be a new trial. I mean,
well, to me, the motive, I mean, in what I've read about this, I didn't know that the victim was the son of a mayor. That's what puts it all together for me. That's what means, because that gives the state a motive to get the case solved. Right. And I read in one of the articles I read about this, because they have made recent appeals to Gretchen Whitmer, the governor, the good Democrat governor of Michigan, to commute his sentence. And we've heard from the state of Michigan that he is still the most plausible suspect. Well, most plausible suspect means nothing. You have to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What do you mean he's the most plausible suspect? That's like saying, people can't fly, but Michael Jordan can jump real high, so he's the most plausible human who could ever fly because he could jump high. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's an absurd thing to say. Which brings me to this, because I do want to get into this, because Gretchen Whitmer is the governor now, and this is a state case, so she has the power to commute his sentence. This doesn't have to be Trump or Biden in the past, right? She can do this. So aviation experts dispute plane theory used to convict Michigan's ninja killer. 3 aviation experts have written letters to Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in support of a bid for clemency by a state prisoner nicknamed the Ninja Killer, who has been fighting to overturn his murder conviction for more than 30 years. The letters, which were delivered to Whitmer's office by Temujin Kensu's legal team on December 5th, cast doubt on the sensational theory presented at trial that the then 23-year-old could have chartered a private plane to fly him from one end of the state to the other, shot the victim, and returned home without leaving a trace. Just have to remind people, this is NBC News. This is NBC News.
It's so absurd on the face of it.
Yeah, like you can't even believe what you're
The
reading.
idea that you got a jury to convict,
right,
on this,
and their
theory.
main reasoning was because of the plane theory. That's what they said. This was, yeah, he was far away, but the plane, they actually had a pilot testify at court, and it turns out that, oh, it was the prosecutor's private pilot.
Yes, the prosecutor's private pilot testified as an expert witness about how he could have flown back there in a blizzard on a private plane.
Right.
It's so improbable, it's unbelievable, said Harvey Setter, 82, who wrote one of the letters. Setter, now retired, managed the Delta County Airport in Escanaba, Michigan, between 1982 and 1999. The two other letters were written by the former owner of an airport service station and a commercial pilot who both offered a similar assessment to Setter's based on their knowledge of local airports connected to the case and past experience with the key witness behind the plane theory. The men say they were not previously contacted by authorities. So, I mean, again, you can't even believe you're reading an NBC article when you talk about that. And you have Gretchen Whitmer there, who has this on her desk, right? I mean, it is in her power, yes, to set this man free. You told me, Joy, her own father wants her to set this man free, right?
He does.
Yeah. So Gretchen Whitmer's own
And
father
staff.
and staff. Okay. Well, that you didn't tell me. She hasn't done it. She I mean, it's just incredible to me. I mean, it's not incredible. This is what the Democrats do. But you'd think this is what absolute
Jordan
cowards
in his book
they are.
gets into that with Whitmer. That
Right.
actually the Republican appointed special prosecutor was pretty close to bringing criminal charges and putting together a RICO case against the people responsible for Flint. And it was Whitmer, when she came in, who dismantled that whole process.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, she has had his clemency report on her desk for 6 years since she took office. Literally a signature would get him out. He is 61 years old. He has been in prison 2/3 of his life, almost 40 years. And we don't really want clemency, so to speak. We want him to be pardoned because he's innocent. We want him out, and he's cool with clemency, but she also has the ability to just give him a pardon and say, you know what? And she's talking about running for the White House in 2028. So
no, she's just an absolutely wretched person. I mean, just a totally horrible person. And the cowardice, I mean, it's so cowardly because I would imagine the only reason she is hesitant to do it or reluctant to do it, unwilling to do it, is because she thinks there is some sort of like political price to pay. This is how just back on their heels Democrats are about issues of crime, is that they're so terrified to look like they're soft on crime that they will keep this is a comical case if it weren't so tragic, clearly a wrongful conviction. They can overturn that. Basically, they can grant clemency or pardon, or they can in essence undo the consequences of it by setting him free, and she won't do it. It must be because she's afraid there's a political price. Which, think of the contempt you have to have for the public to think that there's a political price to pay for freeing this man. Anybody who looks at this case for 3 minutes can tell that he should have never been sent to prison in the first place.
Yeah, it's not even a matter of opinion, And Whitmer herself and the DA, Dana Nessel, have never once in these 6 years said the words, Temujin Kensu is guilty. Temujin Kensu had something to do with it. Temujin Kensu is a murderer. Temujin Kensu is a killer. They have never said that once. They know he's innocent.
Yeah, Nessel is the one who destroyed the Flint prosecutions.
Yep. Absolutely. And she started the CIU, which is supposed to be looking into wrongful convictions. That's what she ran on. Temujin's wife, Paula, even campaigned for her because she said, you know what? It's going to be the first case I work on is Temujin. And he should get out. I mean, this just doesn't make sense. She got elected and he's still in there.
That's amazing. Well, while we have a couple minutes left, I do want you to get your second big announcement in. So why don't you do that?
So I've been with the blessing of Temujin and his incredible wife Paula. I have been writing a book about this insanity, and it is actually going up for pre-order in 2 weeks. And you can actually read the entire transcript of our 4-hour conversation in prison, but there's also a lot of other stuff in there from just my experiences going to Michigan and how hard it was to leave and leave him in there, to what an incredibly beautiful person he is and how he's still so kind and loving despite the fact that I would be a hateful asshole. I would hate the world. I
Right.
would, just be so hateful. And he is so beautiful and so caring. And we have had such a great friendship for almost 5 years. So I talk about that as well. And the reason it's called Our Friend Temujin is because I've also been receiving letters from people who know him, who are going to share what was your reaction when you first heard the case? What do you want to say about him as a person? What do you want to happen in the future? So I have this collection of letters that people are writing to me about Temujin that I'm going to be putting throughout, because he is someone that affects our lives very, very much. I don't want to get emotional, but it's so hard when you know him as a person. And I mean, people watching, I'm sure, are like, why the fuck is this guy in prison? And
It's everyone's worst nightmare.
Yep.
That you would just be pulled into the system like that for no reason.
Exactly.
It's a Hitchcock plot.
Yeah.
It is. And he has a brain tumor and
Yep.
he's being denied treatment. He's being denied his chemo. He's being denied even vitamins. He was telling me he goes out in the prison yard and eats dandelion to try and get vitamins. They're trying to kill this man. They want him to die in prison. That is their plan, because if he dies in prison, they don't have to deal with the consequence of saying, we put this man in prison for almost 40 years and we were wrong.
Right. Exactly. I mean, this came up in a different case. I forget the specifics, but yeah, a lot of times they'll keep you in there just so that you don't get out and talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you get out and you talk, well, that's why the book is important. And so here is the book, and you can pre-order the book here, newerainc.org/book. I'll leave that up on the screen for a little while. So please take a screenshot of this if you're watching on your phone or your laptop, whatever. Screenshot that, write that down, and go and check that out. And Joy, tell people where they can follow you, because I'm assuming you're going to be dropping these audio files as podcasts online somewhere. So let people know where they can find you for that.
Yeah. So, and my friend Jason Usry is doing this is the first book ever written about Temujin as well. So that's why it's really important that I'm hoping people check it out. But there's also the first full podcast of Temujin. My friend is doing it. It comes out in 2 weeks. It's called Inconceivable. And some of the audio is going to be used on that podcast as well.
Okay,
He
great.
was with me out in Michigan. He met with Temujin as well. And he's been, interviewing people in Michigan, things like that. So the podcast is pretty much coinciding with my book. So definitely check that out as well. Twitter is at Savage Joy Marie 1. I will be posting a lot of this, and I'll be sharing updates and everything. We have been getting some good news here and there, but we have been happy before. We've been happy before, like, oh my God, this new information, it's going to change everything. Oh my God, he has to get out now. And he's still in there. So please call Whitmer, email Whitmer, tell her you need to free Temujin Kensu. He is innocent. He's innocent. And it's on your watch. It is on your watch that this man is suffering. Also, she has been made aware many, many times that he is being deprived of his chemo and other treatments. And he actually won a lawsuit against the prison for denying him this. So she knows for a fact, as does DA Dana Nessel. So this is not like they don't know. He's suffering in there. We have sent thousands of emails and phone calls to Gretchen Whitmer. She has never responded once, even to constituents, even to his own wife. She needs to be replaced. She needs to be out of office. She will be out of office because her term is coming up. And she needs to, I don't even want to say do the right thing, because this isn't justice, even if he gets out tomorrow. Like almost 40 years of his life.
His whole life,
taken
really.
from him.
Yeah.
So to me, there is no justice, but at least if he gets out tomorrow, he always says, I want to go home with my wife and my puppies. Like he's just wants something simple, mentally and emotionally, psychologically. Like, this man is in absolute hell, and we need to get him home. We have to. So that's my goal.
All right. Well, keep in touch with us, Joy, and everybody. The book is here. We can learn more about this case, and you can follow Savage Joy on Twitter. Joy, God bless. It's always great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
So much. I cannot tell you guys enough how much this means to me, Temujin, his wife, and all of his supporters. They're so excited you guys had me on today. So much love to you guys.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. Absolutely. So keep in touch, and keep us in the loop for sure.
Thank you guys so much. Much love.
Please clap.